Sienna Bennett never imagined her life would come to this. At 27, she was a respected financial analyst in Atlanta, building her career one spreadsheet at a time. She had plans, dreams, a future she was creating with her own two hands. Her small apartment downtown was modest, but hers. Her promotion to senior analyst was just weeks away. Everything she had worked for was finally falling into place. Then her father's investment firm collapsed after the market crash. And suddenly those dreams didn't matter anymore. Her family was drowning in debt, facing bankruptcy, and the walls were closing in fast. Sienna watched her father age 10 years in a matter of weeks, saw her mother crying quietly in the kitchen when she thought no one was looking. The creditors were circling like vultures, and there was nowhere left to run. That's when Dante Marcello entered the picture. 33 years old, and a man whose name carried weight in circles most people never knew existed. Dante had everything: money, power, influence that extended through the city like roots beneath concrete. But he had one massive problem. His late father's will contained a clause that would strip him of his entire empire if he didn't marry by his 35th birthday, and that deadline was exactly 2 months away. Dante had spent years avoiding commitment, moving through relationships with models and socialites who wanted his attention but never his heart. Now he was backed into a corner, and men like Dante Marcello didn't handle corners well. Someone, a family connection who knew both sides, saw an opportunity. Dante needed a wife immediately. Sienna's family needed financial rescue. A merger marriage would solve both problems. It wasn't about love or compatibility. It was pure business, signed and sealed like any other transaction. Sienna's father sat her down in their living room, his eyes full of desperation she had never seen before, and asked her to save them all. His voice broke when he said it. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know what I'm asking, but we're out of options." What could she say? This was her family, the people who had raised her, loved her, supported her dreams. So she said yes, even though every part of her screamed that this was wrong, even though she knew exactly what she was trading away. The wedding happened on a cold Tuesday morning at the courthouse. No flowers, no celebration, no pretense that this was anything other than what it was: a contract being executed. Dante showed up in a perfectly tailored black suit, his jaw tight, his eyes hard as stone. He barely looked at Sienna during the ceremony, his attention fixed somewhere over her shoulder as if she weren't really there at all. A gold ring on his right hand caught the light as he signed the papers. Heavy, ornate, clearly old. Family heirloom, perhaps. When the judge said they could kiss, Dante gave her the most dismissive peck on the cheek, like she was a distant relative he was obligated to acknowledge. The touch was cold, perfunctory, empty of any warmth. His family stood behind him during the ceremony, their expressions ranging from bored to barely concealed disgust. His mother, an elegant woman with ice in her eyes, looked Sienna up and down with the kind of judgment that needed no words. His younger brother smirked throughout the entire proceeding, clearly finding the whole situation amusing. After the ceremony, while they were signing the final papers, Sienna overheard the brother talking to a cousin near the window. The words cut through her like broken glass. Just wait out a year, then divorce her. That's the plan, right? Dante didn't correct him, didn't defend her. He just stood there adjusting his cufflinks like she didn't exist, like she was furniture being moved into place. In that moment, Sienna understood exactly what this marriage meant to him. She was a checkbox on a legal document. A problem solved, nothing more. They drove to his home in silence. Sienna had expected a modern penthouse, something sleek and corporate. Instead, the car pulled up to an old stone building in a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights seemed dimmer than elsewhere. The structure looked like it had stood there for generations, weathered and imposing, with narrow windows and heavy doors. Inside, the atmosphere matched the exterior. Dark wood paneling lined the walls. Amber light from brass fixtures created pools of shadow in the corners. The furniture was expensive but traditional. Leather, carved wood, nothing bright or welcoming. It smelled of old books and something else. Leather and smoke, perhaps. The scent of a world Sienna didn't belong to. Dante led her through the massive space without a word, his footsteps echoing on marble floors. Finally, he stopped at a set of double doors, and pushed them open to reveal the master bedroom. It was stunning in a severe way, all dark colors and heavy fabrics, dominated by an enormous bed that looked more like a throne than a place to sleep. His voice was ice when he finally spoke. The rules are simple. We live separate lives, no affection, no expectations. This is business, nothing more. We'll appear together when necessary for family events or certain functions. Otherwise, stay out of my way. Each word landed like a stone. Sienna stood there, her small suitcase in hand, her coat still buttoned, absorbing every cold syllable. She had expected this, had prepared herself for it, but hearing it out loud still sent a chill through her chest. Dante turned to walk toward his study, clearly considering the conversation over. The discussion complete, the terms laid out, nothing more to say. But then Sienna did something he didn't expect. She grabbed her suitcase and walked right past the master bedroom, down the hall to what appeared to be a guest room. It was smaller, simpler, with plain walls and minimal furniture. But it had a door and a lock, and it would be hers. Dante stopped mid-stride, turning around with a confused frown creasing his forehead. "What are you doing?" "You said separate lives," Sienna replied calmly, meeting his eyes for the first time that day. Her voice was steady, controlled. "If we're keeping distance, let's really keep it. This works better for both of us." She could see the surprise flash across his face, quickly masked but there nonetheless. He had expected her to take the master bedroom, to play the role of his wife even in this hollow marriage, to occupy the space he had designated for her, grateful for whatever scraps he offered. But Sienna was done playing roles. If he wanted distance, she would give him more distance than he could handle. She stepped into the guest room and closed the door. A moment later, she turned the lock. The click echoed in the hallway like a small declaration of war. That first week set the tone for everything that followed. Sienna created her own routine, separate from Dante's entirely. She woke at 5 in the morning, went to the building's small gym in the basement, and left the house before Dante even opened his eyes. She had accepted a position at a prestigious consulting firm, and she threw herself into the work completely, desperately. Work became her salvation. The complex financial models, the client presentations, the strategic planning sessions. She could lose herself in numbers and forecasts, forget for hours at a time that she had sold her future for her family's stability. She came home late, ate dinner alone in her room, and read until she fell asleep. Sometimes she heard movement in the house, footsteps in the hall, the distant sound of Dante's voice on a phone call in his study. But they existed in separate orbits, two strangers sharing an address. Dante would pass her, sometimes in the kitchen or the hallway, and they would nod at each other like polite strangers sharing an apartment building. Good morning. Evening. Nothing more. Dante had expected something different. In his experience, women chased him. They wanted his attention, his time, his approval. They positioned themselves in his path, created reasons to interact, sought validation from his acknowledgement. But Sienna wanted nothing from him, and that was entirely new territory. He found himself noticing small things about her, despite his intention to remain indifferent. How she drank her coffee, black with no sugar, standing by the window in the morning light. How she was always polite to Rosa, the housekeeper, learning her name immediately and asking about her grandchildren. How she left for work dressed sharply in tailored suits that made her look like she owned the world. And how she never, not once, tried to get his attention or approval. By the second month, something shifted. Sienna wasn't just surviving this arrangement. She was thriving. Her new job was going incredibly well. She was getting praise from senior partners, making connections with influential people in the industry. She joined exclusive professional groups and started attending networking events across the city. Her confidence grew with every passing day, and it showed in the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she moved through the world. She would come home sometimes still on her phone, laughing at something a colleague said. Dante would be in his study, reviewing ledgers or taking calls, and he would hear her voice through the walls, bright, genuine, warm, a laugh he had never heard directed at him. One evening, Dante was working late when he heard Sienna come in around 10 at night. She was on her phone, her voice animated in a way that made him pause mid-sentence in his own conversation. "No, that was hilarious. You really said that to the client? She laughed, that real unguarded laugh that seemed to light up the dark hallway. Okay, I'll see you at the meeting tomorrow. Thanks for dinner, Preston. It was really nice. Dante's hand froze on the pen he was holding. Preston. Who the hell was Preston? He found himself walking out of his study before he had consciously decided to move, intercepting Sienna in the hallway. She was still smiling, putting her phone in her bag, and she looked up at him with mild surprise. Who was that? The words came out sharper than he intended, edged with something he didn't want to examine. Sienna looked at him calmly, not startled or guilty, just indifferent. A colleague. We had a work dinner. Not that it's your concern. She walked past him toward her room, and Dante stood there in the dim hallway feeling like an absolute fool. She was right. They had agreed on separate lives. He had demanded it, insisted on it, made it the foundation of this entire arrangement. He had no right to question her, no claim on her time or attention. But the image of her laughing with someone else, someone who made her happy, someone who got to see that genuine smile, sat in his mind like a splinter he couldn't remove. The breaking point came 3 weeks later at a major business gathering that they had to attend together. It was one of those events where appearances mattered, where Dante needed to show stability, commitment, the trappings of a conventional life. Dante was used to these functions, bored by them usually, moving through crowds with practiced ease and calculated charm. But then Sienna walked out of her room that evening in a red dress that made his heart actually stop for a beat. She had done something different with her hair, letting it fall naturally around her shoulders instead of the tight bun she usually wore to work. The dress was elegant but striking, fitted perfectly, the color dramatic against her skin. And she looked absolutely stunning. Not like a wife he was obligated to have, like a woman who could have any man in the room. At the gathering held in a hotel ballroom with crystal chandeliers and too much champagne, Dante watched something he had never witnessed before. Men flocked to Sienna, not because she was his wife, not because of any connection to him, but because she was magnetic. She was smart, talking about market trends and investment strategies with more insight than half the supposed experts in the room. She was funny, making people laugh with her quick wit and sharp observations. And she was kind, genuinely interested in what others had to say, asking thoughtful questions and actually listening to the answers. Dante found himself standing alone near the bar with a drink, watching his wife be the star of the room, and feeling something he had never felt before in his entire life. Jealousy. Real, burning, irrational jealousy. Then Preston Hayes appeared, young, successful entrepreneur, the kind of guy who smiled too much and had too much charm, who wore confidence like cologne. He approached Sienna with obvious interest, and Dante watched her face light up in recognition. They talked for 20 minutes, and Dante counted every second. He saw Preston lean in close to hear her over the crowd, saw him make Sienna laugh with his easy manner, saw him look at her like she was the only person in the room, like she mattered, like she was worth his full attention. Finally, Dante couldn't take it anymore. He walked over and put his hand on Sienna's lower back. The first time he had touched her since their wedding day. The contact sent electricity up his arm. "That's my wife," he said to Preston, his voice sharp and possessive in a way that surprised even himself. Preston looked between them, then at Dante with something like pity in his eyes. "Lucky you, man. Your wife is incredible." The emphasis on your wife made it painfully clear what Preston thought. That Dante didn't deserve her, that he was wasting something precious. The drive home was tense and silent. Dante's hands gripped the steering wheel of the Maserati too tight, his jaw clenched so hard it ached. The city lights blurred past the windows, but he barely saw them. Finally, he broke the silence. "You seem very friendly with Preston." Sienna turned to look at him, and her voice was calm but cutting, each word precisely placed. "He's nice, something you wouldn't understand." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. She went straight to her room when they got home, and the sound of that lock clicking into place echoed through the entire house. Dante stood in the hallway, staring at that closed door, feeling something crack open inside his chest. For the first time, really for the first time, he understood what he had done. He had married an incredible woman and treated her like she was worthless, like she was an inconvenience he had to tolerate. And now she had built a life that didn't need him at all. She had become exactly what he claimed to want: independent, separate, uninvolved. And it was killing him. The third month was torture for Dante. He couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't focus on business, couldn't sleep properly. He would lie in his massive bed and know she was just down the hall, close enough to reach in 30 seconds, but a million miles away in every way that mattered. He started timing his mornings to accidentally run into her in the kitchen, would leave his study door open when he heard her walking by, hoping she would stop to talk. She never did. Just a polite nod, maybe a brief good morning, and then she was gone. He asked Rosa casual questions about Sienna's day, and the housekeeper would give him knowing looks that made him feel pathetic. Even his driver, Rocco, a man who rarely spoke, had given him a look of barely concealed disgust when Dante snapped at him for no reason one morning. Dante tried everything. He suggested they have dinner together, framing it as necessary for appearances. Sienna politely declined. She had plans. He offered to fund an expansion of her father's company, more than their agreement required. She refused, her voice cold. We had a deal. The marriage was enough. Don't make it worse by pretending to be generous now. He tried compliments, stumbling over words like a teenager. You look nice today. She would thank him flatly and keep walking. Every rejection made him more desperate, more aware of what he had thrown away. Then Dante saw it. Sienna had left her calendar open on the kitchen counter one morning, and his eye caught on an entry: lunch with Preston, Thursday 1 o'clock. Something in him snapped. Thursday afternoon, Dante showed up at the restaurant uninvited, walked right past the hostess, ignored her protests, and went straight to the table where Sienna and Preston were sitting, deep in conversation. He sat down without being asked. Sienna's face went from surprised to mortified to absolutely furious in the span of 3 seconds. Preston excused himself awkwardly, clearly sensing the tension, and Sienna didn't say a single word until they got to the car. Then she exploded. You don't get to do this. Her voice was shaking with rage, with hurt, with everything she had been holding back. You made it clear I meant nothing to you. You looked at me with disgust on our wedding night. You told me to stay out of your way. So I did. I built a life without you, a good life, and now you're upset because I'm not chasing you? Because I'm not begging for scraps of your attention? Her voice broke just slightly, and Dante saw tears in her eyes for the first time since he had known her. I don't need you, Dante. I never did. She got out of the car before he could respond, slamming the door hard enough to make the frame rattle. Went straight to her room and locked the door. Dante sat in the garage for an hour after that, the engine off, the silence oppressive. Her words played on repeat in his head. Every accusation was true, every word deserved. He had been cruel, dismissive, arrogant. He had treated her like she was beneath him when the truth was the exact opposite. Sienna was stronger, smarter, and better than anyone he had ever known. And he had been too proud and too stupid to see it until it was too late. That night, Dante stood outside her door for a long time before he finally spoke. His voice was quiet, stripped of the usual authority. Sienna, please, can we talk? Silence. He slid down and sat on the floor, his back against her door, his expensive suit wrinkling against the wall. Then he started talking. Not demanding, not commanding, just talking. Being honest for maybe the first time in his life. He told her everything. How wrong he had been, how his pride had blinded him, how he had been threatened by her from day one because she didn't need him, didn't worship him like everyone else in his life did. How that independence had terrified him because it meant he had no control, no leverage, no power over her. I thought I was too good for you, he whispered to the closed door. Truth is, I'm not good enough for you. You're everything I'm not. Strong, kind, real, and now I can't sleep knowing you're so close but a world away. I can't focus on anything except how badly I ruined this. For a long time, there was only silence. He thought maybe she was asleep, or maybe just refusing to acknowledge him. Then he heard her voice, quiet and broken. You broke me that first night, Dante. I know, he whispered back. I know I did. I don't know if I can trust you. Let me earn it. However long it takes, I'll prove it to you every single day. Just don't give up on this yet. Please. The door stayed locked that night, but the next morning, when Dante woke early and walked to the kitchen, He found that Sienna had left her door unlocked, just slightly ajar. Not an invitation exactly, but not a wall either. A crack, a possibility. Dante showed up every single day after that. He made coffee exactly how she liked it and left it for her before she woke up, with small notes written in his precise handwriting. I paid attention too. He asked about her work and actually listened to her answers, asking follow-up questions that proved he cared, that he was present. When his mother made a snide comment about Sienna at a family dinner 2 weeks later, Dante cut her off sharply, his voice hard as granite. Speak about my wife with respect, or don't speak at all. His mother's face went pale with shock. Dante had never stood up to her before, never contradicted her, never chosen anyone over family. But things had changed. He had changed. Sienna noticed. How could she not? But she stayed guarded, her walls still high. She had been hurt too deeply to just let it go because he suddenly decided to pay attention. Then Dante did something that changed everything. He had overheard Sienna talking to a friend on the phone one evening about her dream of starting her own consulting firm someday. Not just working for someone else, but building something of her own, creating something that mattered. So Dante made it happen. Not in his name, in hers. He found the perfect office space in a building downtown, handled the business licenses and permits through connections that made the process smooth, connected her with potential clients who needed exactly what she could offer, people who would value her insight and expertise. Then he presented it all to her one evening, laying out the folder of documents on the kitchen table. Sienna stared at the papers, her hands trembling slightly. Tears filled her eyes as she read through everything. The lease in her name, the business registration, the client contracts already drafted and ready to sign. Why, she whispered. Why now? After everything? Dante looked at her with complete honesty. No walls, no defenses. Because I finally see you, really see you, and I'm in love with you, Sienna. Not because you're my wife on paper, because you're the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met, and I was too blind to see it before. Sienna's tears spilled over, but she shook her head. Love isn't a word, Dante. It's action. It's consistency. If you mean this, you need to prove it every single day. And I'm keeping the guest room until I'm ready. Done, Dante said immediately. I'll wait as long as it takes. No pressure, no demands. Just let me show you. And he did. Week after week, month after month, Dante proved himself. He remembered her important meetings and asked how they went. Supported her business launch, helping behind the scenes but never trying to control it or take credit. Respected her boundaries completely, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He learned her favorite foods and made sure Rosa prepared them. He noticed when she was stressed and gave her space. He celebrated her victories and supported her through challenges. He became the partner she deserved, slowly, carefully, earning back what he had thrown away. Slowly, so slowly it was almost imperceptible. Sienna's walls started to come down. She began leaving her door open when she was home, started accepting his coffee with a genuine smile, talked to him about her day without him having to ask, laughed at his attempts at humor, rare as they were. 3 months later, on a quiet Thursday evening, Dante was reading in the master bedroom when he heard footsteps in the hallway. He looked up to see Sienna standing in the doorway, her pillow clutched in her arms. She looked nervous, vulnerable in a way he had never seen her before. The strong, confident woman he had married suddenly looking almost shy. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Dante's throat closed up with emotion. He couldn't speak, couldn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Sienna walked into the room and set her pillow down on the other side of the massive bed. Then she climbed in carefully and curled up, still keeping some distance between them. But there, present, choosing to be there. "You fell first," she said quietly, a small smile on her lips. Dante reached over carefully and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "And harder," he admitted. "Good," Sienna said, squeezing his hand back. That night, for the first time since their wedding, they fell asleep in the same room. Not because they had to, because they wanted to, because somewhere along the way, a marriage that started as a business transaction had become something real. Dante had thought she needed him, that she would be desperate for his approval and attention. He had been so completely wrong. Turns out he was the one who couldn't breathe without her. And now that he had her, really had her, not by contract but by choice, he would never take it for granted again. Love wasn't about power or control. It was about seeing someone fully, valuing them completely, and showing up every single day to prove it. Sienna had taught him that, and he would spend the rest of his life being grateful she gave him the chance to learn.